All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Schenirer. I am the City Council member from District 5 and also the Vice Mayor. First of all, just want to appreciate all of you for spending time. Most of the people who are on this Zoom call today have been at one or two of our other sessions. So we're going to change it up just a little bit to not go over everything, but all of the slides will be available. And if you haven't been to one of the first two sessions and you would like to, in your invitation is a link to YouTube that will show you both of those sessions if that's of interest. What we're trying to do here overall, and you have me today, Scott Syfax is out of town, but we've got about 4 of us who will try to fill in for the master facilitator, Mr. Syfax. It will take 4 of us to do that. But what we're doing here overall, very briefly, is trying to engage as much of the business community as we can, and we'll continue to do this, but to really ask them what is important to fund and resource as far as opening up the city. We know that our city's financial situation is not in bad shape right now, but as we reopen, so many have been hurt so much by the pandemic. We really want to make sure that we spend our dollars wisely. We will have somewhere around $112 million in federal ARP money to spend. We've gotten our first tranche. A chunk of that will be going to the business community, and my hope is that it's 25 million. That's what I've set my sights on. And hopefully we can work together. That doesn't count workforce development, which will be another significant piece of that. But we don't want to just put the money out based on what we think might happen from the dais, but really, again, engaging the business community. We use this process in putting out $6 million in youth funding, where we had over 80 youth providing organizations come together and say, these are the strategies that we want to put on the table. This is what we think will work for our young people. And we think the same thing is important with the business community. My hope is that this will also catalyze the business community in Sacramento over time to be more involved in what we're doing as a city, to really bring your voices to the front as we make decisions about how to spend money and how to support the business community. So with that, again, thank you for your time. It is a precious commodity, I know. We will have everyone out at 12 o'clock today. And again, this is the 3rd of 4 sessions. So 4th session, which will happen June 3rd, is where we take all of the information that we've gleaned in the first 3 sessions, put it into some format, and actually ask people to vote on what their main priorities are and where we should be spending our money. So with that, and then we'll also have a presentation by our economic development folks from the city about what they're doing, and then seeing how we can overlay those 2 things together. So with that, I want to move forward. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda today, welcome and meeting goals. As I said, that's what we're trying to do today is look at clean and safe. The 2 other sessions we had, one was on downtown and one was really on our urban corridors. We're going to talk about city public safety today, and we have Bridget Dean and Bill Wan from the impact team who will be talking about that. So it's important to know what we're doing. We're going to have some data and some surveys from our business districts, and we've asked the Downtown Partnership and the Midtown folks to talk a little bit about what they've been going through. And then we'll go to our breakout sessions, which are the most important thing. And we'll have at least an hour for the breakout sessions. We'll have 3 today. And what we hope is that you will choose a facilitator. We don't want to put our thumb on the scale on this. So of the folks in the room, you'll get to choose a facilitator. We have 3 discussion questions that we will put in the chat for you and talk about in a few minutes here. We'll come back and do a 20-minute report out. We'll ask each of the 3 groups to take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about what they're doing and what they discussed. And then we'll very briefly talk about next steps. So that is our time today. Next slide, please. Ground rules, and again, I know about 3/4 of the people who registered today have been to at least one other session, but always good to go over this. We hope that everyone can participate. Everyone has a point of view on this. All of you have been invited because of what you do and how much you care about the city, so that's important. We want to build on ideas. We don't need to recreate the wheel on everything, but if you have fresh ideas, that's great. We've heard some really interesting things over the last 2 sessions, but also build on the discussion that you're having. We want to keep this a little bit informal, a little bit light. We have all struggled through this last year, and the more that we can uplift one another, I think that the happier we will all be. We want to go hard on the issues, not on people. So really talk about what we need to get to, and today will be one of our more difficult topics, no doubt. We have a bike rack for off-topic issues. Scott calls this a parking lot. I'm more environmentally friendly and refer to it as a bike rack, but we want to put those issues aside that are important, but that can find another place. And then if there are others that within your groups you want to talk about, that would be great. Next slide, please. So quality of life and safety concerns. These are some of the topics that we hope you'll cover, but again, we don't want to limit your conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about calls for service, but trash and graffiti, unhoused individuals, encampments is obviously a huge issue, and other safety issues that you all want to bring to the table. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over just a couple of slides really quickly and then turn it over to the head of our Department of Community Response, Bridget Dean, who has been drinking from the proverbial fire hose now for about, she's going to tell us how long, 8 months, 10 months, but doing something that is really incredibly important. So let's go to the next slide. And I hope people can read this, but I think this is important. And these districts are not city council districts. These are police districts. So in police district number 4, when you look at some of these numbers, the change in calls for service for mental health issues, 21% increase. If you look at shooting reports, 171% increase. Number of victims shot, 200% increase. Number of reports with firearms seized, and we have seized literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of firearms already this year. That's up 62%. If you look at these numbers are not good, but they are the hard facts, and we need to deal with facts, and we need to deal with the data as we move forward. So I'm just going to leave this up for a few more seconds if people want to take a look at this. And all of our slides will be available. We will send them out to everyone so you have this data yourself. Let's go to the next slide, please. Same information, District 5. Calls for service up 17%. Firearms seized up 88%. We have challenges, and we're not unique. Cities and counties throughout the country are going through much the same we are. Lots of reasons for it. Certainly COVID has not helped, but something that we need to face head on. Next slide, please. This is also, I'm not sure which district this is, unless this is over.
I think that's citywide.
Citywide for the month of March. Got it. So I'm just going to leave this up for a minute. People can take a look at it. Again, you'll have an opportunity to have these slides on your own. Next slide, please. Thank you, Allison. So I want to turn it over now to Bridget Dean to talk about what we're doing. These are all quality of life issues, and Bridget, you've done an incredible job in a short period of time. You're so appreciated, but tell us what's going on.
Well, hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Bridget Dean, and I'm the director of the Department of Community Response. So most of you I have met with, chatted with, or been in other meetings with in the last few months. So I know you've heard some of this, but I will update you on where we are now so that we can move forward. I was named interim director of a task to create a Department of Community Response on July 14th of 2020. I was named permanent director on, I think it was February 2nd of 2021. And so, and I was given a 2-year window to stand up a department to start taking alternative calls of response so that law enforcement and fire could handle those calls that they are best suited and really need to be addressing. And on that point, if you just review what Jay shared now about firearm calls for service and some of those other things, and those are the areas where we really need policing engaged and involved. So that idea is that the calls for service that aren't a safety risk necessarily and are not criminal would come into the hands of DCR and my team. So those would be mental health related calls for service, homelessness, which I know I'll touch on here in a moment, and a lot of those areas, juvenile related calls for service, school related calls for service in those areas would ultimately come into DCR's wheelhouse. So since we started this department, I am currently up to, I have 8 social workers out in the field right now who are doing outreach in the homeless community specifically. As we rolled out this past year, we all know that that's been a priority for council and for our city and for all of you, many of you. And so we are working diligently to get services into those individuals as quickly as we can and to get people navigated into either our Safe Ground hotel voucher program or reconnected with their families, service providers, or others that they have as a support mechanism. The other thing we've been doing is hiring our neighborhood resource coordinators. So I currently have 1 full-time coordinator out on the street Monday through Friday, and then in 2 weeks, we will have that up to 6. So we are going to be able to have basically 4 to 6 teams out. Right now, we're looking at weekdays, which will be Monday through Friday, with a social worker and a neighborhood resource coordinator together in a vehicle responding to homelessness, which right now is our priority, and other concerns related to those areas. The other thing I'd like to mention when we talk about safety is one of the biggest tasks I recently took on was realigning our 311 model to make sure that those calls that you're all putting in or the community's putting in about a trash pile or an encampment or a concern that's not criminal is coming over to DCR. So in the last week, we've now realigned 311. And what I am going to ask and urge is that all of you start entering your requests related to homelessness, if it's not a crime or an emergency, into 311. That system is now completely sending those over to my shop immediately. We literally have a staff member going through them right away, and we're able to get to those places very quickly. Additionally, the next step you'll see in that rollout is if you enter a call, we'll actually put a response in there so that you can see what we did and what we were able to do. And that's important to note. On that as well, we've realigned our forensic clean teams, and starting here on July 1, they will be specifically being completely coordinated through those 311 calls and service and Department of Community Response. Why is that important? For a lot of you, you get a lot of businesses and constituency calls about trash piles or some of those other issues that could be addressed quickly and easily. But in all honesty, they were sitting sometimes up to 7, 10, 12 days. That's no fault of anyone. There's just that many calls coming in. So with this realignment, we're now able to sort them immediately, respond to them quickly, and hopefully get that alleviated for you all, as well as get those individuals when we make contact either into one of our safe grounds or our service providers, or at least start making that rapport and connection to move them forward. The public health order is still in effect. And so Bill Wan's on today to chat a little bit about some of that and where that's going. And then I also know Lieutenant Roman Murrieta is on as well. So related to the policing questions. Overall, we will be coming back. I will be coming back to council, I believe, in early August to give a report of what it looks like. In our last council meeting, Jay had requested, as he should, where we are and what that looks like through the next year of this program. And so I'll be bringing that to council in August. Until then, I just want to stress that I know that there is a lot of shift happening. I know that reopening is important. I live downtown. I am committed to our city and to making it best for all of our residents. Homelessness, as you all know, has been on the front burner for me and for many of you, but we are continuing to change the model and we are continuing to change our response. We are in discussions with the county on mental health response. That is also something we are discussing. We are now having regular meetings, and we're talking about how to coordinate that so that the county can provide some of those pieces for us so that we can start getting that mental health service out quickly. The last thing I'll mention is the Schur Center downtown. That is still there and is still taking individuals, and DCR is now going to also be using that facility to get individuals into that space as quickly as possible if they're open for detox or services related to substance use disorders. So we are doing a lot of different things, and we're doing them quickly. It's not perfect, but it will get there. I do believe we will make a shift here in the city. And then if anybody wants to reach out to Jenna, I'm going to put you on blast, Jenna, sorry. But Jenna Abbott and I actually just started a pilot program in the River District with DCR, which is really around clean and safe when it comes down to it. So if you want to reach out to her about what that looks like, but the idea is for us to provide our outreach teams along with some of her teams and a forensic clean crew to really start maintaining that area and space more quickly and efficiently for the individuals there, as well as creating a collaborative regular meeting with our service providers in the River District so that we are all on the same page. So Jay, anything I left out?
No, I think that's great. Do you want to turn it over to Bill
Yes,
to talk a
I
little bit?
will. Yep. So Bill Wan, if you're on, you can take the PD impact side.
All right. Thank you, guys. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but many of you know me personally. The last couple of years, you've seen me try to muddle through the homeless stuff. And I've always tried to be responsive in my first 20 years of my career. And the last 3 years have been really challenging. But I'm so excited that DCR is coming on board right now. And if you know me, I've always liked to be a police officer. I chose this career. And so I'm happy that we are kind of right sizing maybe the police department, or at least fixing, the social workers are doing social work and the police officers are moving back into doing caring police work, but still police work. So what's that mean? The kind of first responders on the 3 ones, as Bridget was saying, are Bridget's team. And we are kind of backing them up, working together when necessary. And then we are working on refocusing and reprioritizing what the impact team is going to be doing. So a couple of snapshots just from this past couple of weeks. We had a rumor through the homeless community that there was a homeless gang member with a gun that's been flashing it around. We've been tracking him, and we recovered a replica sawed-off shotgun during that, and we're still looking for a possible other firearm. We have been, there was a homeless subject that was vandalizing vehicles in the area of 30th and H. We identified that person yesterday. We think we're going to be doing more follow-up to make sure it's the right guy. And so what we're doing is we're focusing on serious crimes, and we are trying to bring people to justice in the homeless community while we're keeping those relationships with them. And then whenever Bridget's team needs us, we go help them as necessary. But it's been a great partnership starting out. We've got good relationships going, and we're just trying to refocus on where we can make the most difference, which is picking up some of these serious crimes that may not get investigated otherwise and tracking them using our relationships to do so.
Thank you, Bill. The only thing I want to add is this is going to take a little time to transition. We're looking at calls for service, but having Bridget's team work on the homeless issues, mental health issues, domestic violence issues, some places where they will need support. But hopefully we can have the police do what they need to be doing around serious crime. And as a compassionate city, we can take care of those who need services and hook them up to services and get them on the right path. So Bill, thank you. And thank you for what you've been doing for the last 3 years and muddling through, but you've always been responsive. And it's much appreciated in a daunting task, no doubt. So Bridget, we're gonna move on unless you have any final thoughts on this piece.
I do know, Roman, I don't know if you had anything to add, but I know Lieutenant Marriott is on.
Lieutenant, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can talk to you about the regional transit side. So I'm a SAC PD lieutenant currently assigned as to regional transit. I got here just before COVID started. And I can tell you what we've been doing, and I think Jenna and Bridget can attest. It's all about collaboration and partnership. When I got to regional transit, I quickly saw the need, so I tripled our homeless response team. And in partnering with, the Department of Community Response in Sac State, we were able to get a Masters of Social Work intern over here as well to help deal with the exact issues that we've been talking about. That program has proven to be so successful that we were actually allocated the funding this year. So July 1, we are hoping to have a full-time social worker assigned to regional transit. And it's been great because that person is connected to DCR and connected to the police department. And so we're all working in partnership and moving in the same direction. About 3 weeks ago, we started what we're calling a route stabilization team. So we're actually taking a proactive approach on Wednesdays. That's when we have the staffing, and we're going out with our facilities workers, and we're going to be moving forward, partnering with the different PBIDs and associations to actually proactively, it sounds similar to what Jenna and Bridget are doing, to proactively go out and deal with some of the issues on RT property. Hand in hand with, the maintenance crews from some of these associations, our officers, our social worker. So, it's about working together and, doing what we can and doing our part. So that's essentially it for us.
Great. Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate that. And it's so important to, RT was doing so well prior to the pandemic. It's still doing well and expanding. But the clean and safe piece is just huge, obviously.
Yep.
All right. We're gonna move on. We wanted to give you a couple of snapshots and have some of you speak. We're gonna start with the downtown partnership, and I don't know if it's Dion or Emily or Michael. And we have a couple of slides. Emily, you look like you're getting ready to speak.
Yeah. We're gonna tag team it, Jay, if you don't mind. I'll start and Emily will go, and then I'll come back.
No, that's great. And we have a couple of slides. Ulysses, if you want to put those up.
Perfect. So you can go to the next slide. Wanted to give you a snapshot, really, what we're seeing downtown. This is just a quick snapshot of our events from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. We had, of course, we had some significant damage in our district at the end of May. Those items and incidents are not listed in this particular slide, but really what we're seeing in the downtown area, obviously graffiti is rampant during the COVID. We've seen our daytime populations really decrease by roughly 80%. We thought we would see a reduction in a lot of our calls for service and how we're responding to our area businesses that are still open, but we did not. We actually saw some increases in various areas. Of course, when we look at the topic of discussion around homelessness, one of the larger numbers there is the 642 incidents of trespass and camping. And those incidents are recorded as an individual that's blocking an access door, either an emergency exit to a large building and or an entrance to a business. And so a lot of our property and business owners are unable to get into their buildings to even open up just due to the uniqueness of the downtown core is all of our businesses open up on public sidewalk. There's very few businesses downtown that actually have private space. They usually are directly up to the public thoroughfare, which is the sidewalk. And so that's where our points of conflict for the downtown core oftentimes are related to. As you move up, obviously assaults, Jay, you talked about some police stats. We've seen our assault with deadly weapon just within the downtown partnership has increased over 200% at first quarter of this year compared to first quarter of last year. So a pre-pandemic year compared to a pandemic year, and yet our net increases are over 200%. So what we've seen is a lot of violence on our sidewalks and streets and our parks, a lot of typically homeless upon homeless violence, but nonetheless, we have a lot of victims where we necessarily didn't have them prior. I'll let Emily talk, excuse me, on the next slide to talk a little bit about some of the damage that we received during the protests.
So this is a snapshot that we put together based on self-reported, and I think you probably all saw this late last year when the community came out to help with some of the cleanup. We partnered with the city of Sacramento and Sacramento County to ask for the economic injury disaster loan, there we go, declaration, to be able to try to provide some resources for both cleanup and repairs. So that's why we have such detailed information here. So I'm not going to go through each bullet, but I think this is a snapshot that really explains just how devastating that last week of May, early June really was in downtown. Reminder, 66 blocks, 144 properties. There's 197 properties in the district. So it gives you, again, just a sense of the magnitude of the damage that we saw in the downtown area. And next slide.
All right, back to me, and a little bit of, right now we still have 34 of our businesses that are boarded. We're working with those individual property owners, but there's a little bit of PTSD on their behalf. They lost a lot, that they don't have the ability to really file another insurance claim. So we're working, it's one of our priorities with the Clean and Safe Group, is to work individually with those property owners to figure out what is their timeline, what can we provide a business or property owner to convince them to take those boards down as we reopen. And so this slide really is just a quick snapshot of what our team has done over the first quarter of this year. And you can see, we're active. We never left the field. We've been out there like many of the other bids that are on this call. We were out here every day cleaning and maintaining. But the exciting part is we've definitely seen our directions and our citizen assist and our merchant contacts. We've seen those increasing. So where we look at 80% of our district probably was not downtown for an extended period, we're starting to see those numbers go down to a larger number of sidewalk activity and people coming back and engaging not only with their offices, but with our area businesses. So we're excited about that.
So this all plays into kind of the bigger conversation around reopening downtown. And so between, the clean and safe statistics that you've seen, as well as the damage, it really has created this perception: is downtown open? Is downtown safe? Is downtown welcoming? And that's really where perception and reality kind of meet. So next slide. So downtown Sacramento, we, like many PBIDs, are part of the International Downtown Association, and we were able to take advantage of a nationwide survey. They retained an independent research group. There were 20 downtown associations that participated in the survey. And you can see here in the blue, those are the responses to the Downtown Sacramento Community Survey versus the gray, the aggregate or average across the 20 downtowns that they surveyed across the country. I think what's probably most compelling for us here is seeing that, in comparison to downtowns across the country, people do not feel safe coming downtown. They don't feel as safe as they did prior to the pandemic. And again, going back to both reality and perception, what does this mean for reopening? And as we try to reinforce the businesses who did survive and what it looks like moving forward. We don't often talk about, the exact numbers who closed. We want to try and stay positive, but the reality is 10% of the businesses have announced permanent closure. 25% still remain temporarily closed. And how many of those will fall into that permanent category as we move forward is truly frightening. And, we saw some of the comments that I don't feel safe downtown. I heard that someone was assaulted downtown. I heard my coworker. When we did an employer survey, over half cited concerns related to public safety versus issues around health. So again, it's something that we are definitely seeing and that we need to pay attention to if we really want to restart downtown and the economic engine that's going to really restart Sacramento as we move forward. I think you might be on mute, Jay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I had the light rail vehicles going on behind me. At least they're running today, so it's a good thing. Let's go ahead and get a snapshot of Midtown. Jameson and Emily.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Emily here from Midtown Association. Great to see so many, I would say friendly faces, but in a year of doing Zoom, it's friendly names on the screen, since I know we're all tired of looking at our own face here on video. I look forward to when we can be together in person for these conversations soon. But I'm really grateful to see such incredible leadership from our business community in engaging in this conversation. What we're sort of showing today is similar to, I think, what so many of our bids could say, very similar to some of the conversation that was just shared with DSP, similar to where I've seen Jenna nodding at critical points in the various conversations we've had already around just the depth of impact that's been occurring on our streets. What we've put together here for you all is within the Midtown Association area, which is 110 blocks starting from 16th Street and moving over to the Alhambra corridor, a report on our average safety calls from 2017 to 2019 compared against 20, and then sort of where we are on track right now for 21. And so what I would draw your attention to is the areas where you see the orange line significantly above the blue line. That shows you the significant increase we had in 2020 on both our safety and maintenance calls in our area of the community. We're averaging a minimum of 30% increase year over year. In some areas, it's been as much as 150% increase. And from a standpoint of how P-bids and bids work, I know so many of you all know this on this call, but our budgets tend to go up somewhere between 2 and 5% from an assessment standpoint. And so when we're dealing with increases at 30% for demand for service within that budget, it is incredibly challenging to meet that demand. And, I want to be positive, but I also want to be realistic and say that I am very enthusiastic about the direction the city is taking. I'm very impressed with the work that Bridget Dean, that you are doing with your team. Consistently, we find the leadership of the police department so responsive, as well as our elected officials. But the reality is that we do not have a system right now that is meeting the demand load that we're experiencing. And I could read you the daily emails that come in. I know you all are seeing them as well. Just this morning, I got one from our friends over at Loafing Lightings, which, they've been in Midtown for as long as I think any of us can remember. And on a daily basis, they now have somebody who is living behind their building, chasing their employees with broken bottles, offering to kill and cut their employees. And that is just, one example of so many stories that we're hearing on a regular basis. And while we have 20 outreach workers that are on the street and we continue to increase that number as our budget allows, that does not meet that increased demand. And we are seeing lack of response from a 911 standpoint, sometimes over an hour, if not more, when there's a need. So with that, just would like to really reiterate, and I know so many of you share this perspective, that our business districts are really the sales tax generators for our community and are really engaged and interested in stepping forward. We are more than happy to continue to consider how to redesign our model to fold into new points of access as we stand up shelters, as we look at moving away from SAC Steps Forward being one of our key points of central navigation to moving to Bridget Dean and your team. But we are really struggling to keep up with the demand. And as we look at a huge shift nationwide, to Emily's point with DSP, looking at how safe people feel returning to downtowns and to central commercial cores, we are also at the same time dealing with a significant trend of whether people are going to even return to offices. And our businesses are really dependent on ensuring that we have employees in our district in the day that feel excited to want to come to a commercial area to work versus choosing to be at home. And then residents that feel safe coming out into the evenings to explore our various entertainment options as they start to reopen. And at this point, we are engaged and enthusiastic about where we're going, but we are very concerned about ensuring that we have the proper infrastructure on the street and the proper sort of collaborations and networks set up to make sure that we can provide an experience where our business owners are not afraid of being assaulted. Our folks who are either coming here in the daytime or in the evening feel safe and welcomed, and that we sort of return to being those sales tax generators so that our city continues to thrive.
Great, thank you, Emily. And again, the hard, brutal facts are tough, but we need to face them if we're ever going to be successful. So next slide, please. I don't know if you wanted to talk about this at all. People can just take a quick look at it.
Yeah, I'll allow you to read and enjoy that news.
Okay. It is exciting that 38 new businesses have opened in Midtown since April of last year. We want to make sure that they thrive. So what we are going to do now, as we've done before, and this is the bulk of what we're trying to accomplish today, is put you all into 3 breakout sessions, 3 breakout rooms. These are the discussion questions. And again, it's a random pairing, so we'll put you in. We have a scribe in each room that works with us. So everything will be, and the sessions will be recorded. I want to remind the scribes to turn the recording on in your breakout sessions. So 3 questions we'd like you to address, but if there's more you want to discuss or other thoughts, that's great. One is what safety and quality of life challenges are affecting your business and moving toward full recovery. So this is the immediate, and number two is immediate and concrete actions the city could take. So what should we be doing today? We will have these funds, and hopefully, again, my ask is going to be at least 25 million for the business community. How should we best spend that? And I think there will be other funds for workforce development and others through other channels. We're also looking at state money, particularly around homelessness. That will help us greatly. Just as an FYI, the way the council is doing this is we'll do it sequentially. So we're working on our budget now. We had an 8.5-hour council meeting Tuesday night where we talked about police budgets and fire budgets. We've talked about our YPSI budget as well, our community departments. And once we get through with that, which will be mid-June, we'll take up the ARP money and the state money. We want to make sure that we are as efficient as possible using the right dollars in the right places so that we don't waste any opportunities. So second question is, as I said, immediate and concrete actions the city could take. And then also looking at 1 to 2 years, what's the medium term here? And then the third question is really about roles and responsibilities. What should the city be doing, or how do we best work with the private sector along these lines? So these questions will be in your chat. I'm going to ask, it's 11 or 10:40 right now. We'll come back at 11:30. So we're going to give you 50 minutes to do it. Please also ask someone in your group to report out on this. Could be your facilitator or someone else. And then we'll go through briefly those 3 report outs and next steps starting at 11:30. So Yuli, if you want to put everyone in breakout rooms, that would be great. And again, thank you all for your time. I know you've weathered a hard year. It's very much appreciated. So thank you, everyone. This is the point where we hear from you all about the conversations you've had. Again, I'm going to go as you're thinking about that, and hopefully we have who from your group will do the report out. This is the information that we will put together, and June 3rd, I'm hoping that you all will attend. It won't be 2 hours, probably be a little bit less, but it's where we'll put together all the priorities that you've talked about, all the strategies that you've talked about, and let people actually vote on it to say, these are the things that we need to do immediately, and this is what's a little bit more long-term. That will then be presented to the council in the weeks following that, and my hope is that we'll have significant numbers of folks who've been involved with this also come back to help us on a long-term basis, because this will require, I think, an advocacy effort. These are the times. The priority setting will be June 3rd from 12 to 2, and then mid-June we'll go to the council. Thanks, Ulysses. Let's go ahead and do the reports out. We'll start with group number 1. Tina, is that you?
Hey, that's me. Yeah. So I took the notes and facilitated. Thank you, everyone in our group. My fingers are tired from typing so many notes. On the first question, mental health, screaming and yelling and fighting against air enemies. It scares families in Old Sac and in downtown. I think evenings with the Ferris wheel in Old Sac, the youth come down and cause trouble. People don't want to go back to work on J, K, and L. It's hard to reopen when people are not willing to come back and work in downtown. Property managers are saying that it's a challenge to get people to come downtown to work, or people to spend their money. They don't want to come. So consistently, we heard from everyone that people are still afraid. It's a big issue that we have to work. It's not just mental illness, it's drugs, drug use in the broad daylight, assaults, vandalism and graffiti. Mulvaney's van is just covered with graffiti. I've walked by it several times, and it's demoralizing after a hard year. The cops are good and Midtown is great, and some people are saying that parking is hard. which is good because that means that people are starting to come back. But there are these bigger issues that need to be dealt with. It takes too long for responses to happen with 311. PBIDs are much quicker, but they're maxed out and they need additional funding so that they can add services. Midtown would like to add 2 more vans, and downtown, I don't know, they just need, all of the PBIDs need more money to take the work from the city, which is graffiti removal, trash pickup, and moving some of the people along. But the city needs to take on moving the violent people and making sure that there's some recourse for theft. People are stealing up to the $800 and then they're gone and they come back and back and back. And many of the businesses, especially in Old Sac, are complaining about the thieves. Again, drugs, mental health, assaults, and graffiti are from Midtown. Caltrans is not managing sites well along the freeways, and they're becoming major homeless encampments, and the council is not working hard enough to provide maintenance in those areas. I know that they're doing some work, but it's still, those are still pretty messy. And those are at the entrances to our city. So it's not very welcoming. People would come down and not feel quite safe. And question number 2, trash pickup. In Old Sac, they place new cans that are harder to reach into, but there's not enough crews to empty them on a regular basis. And so overflowing trash. And people that are visiting our town are seeing the overflowing trash. Again, with number 2, graffiti. Graffiti crimes are a misdemeanor, no penalty, no recourse against the taggers or the window smashers. People have pretty much complete immunity. The city council could move, as the county did with Laura's Law, necessary to work with mental health people and get them into treatment. But they mentioned that there's 2 types of mental illness. There's the mental illness that people are born with, and then there's the substance use disorder people that are experiencing mental health because of the drugs that they're using. And it takes 2 different people to deal with those. I think that solid waste money that the city should take over from the commercial haulers, I think that that's happening. And in key corridors, there really needs to be an extended effort in that trash cleanup. Let's see, the boarded up buildings, everyone seems to want to have the city help the businesses to take down the boards and replace the windows and clean up in front of the businesses that have been boarded up. There's still a lot of buildings that are boarded up. Let's see. PBIDs need an increase of 30 to 45% in their clean and safe budgets, in their general budgets. They do not have enough people to stay up with all of the clean and safe work that they have to do, that they're called throughout each of their PBIDs. Hey, I've taken a lot of time. Let's see the good thing. Huh?
You're good. Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. I wanted to end with something good. There are job openings. Some people are still in business. I'm still in business. I'm happy about that. The PBIDs are reopening, and June 15th is coming, and we're opening whether we're ready or not. And I think that there's some serious concerns that we're not quite ready to take on all of the people that are going to be coming to our areas. Generally, everyone's very optimistic, gain business. Things are going in a positive direction. There was an outpouring of support. Thank you, Patrick, for this. There's an outpouring of support for the city to make over 150,000 meals, and everyone came through. It's a great testimony to the spirit of Sacramento. New jobs are opening. Let's see. There's a willingness to have these conversations and to come up with solutions. And that's mine. Thank you, everyone, for all of these. And I have more comments.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Thank you. Sounds like a pretty intense discussion. So
We were all over the place.
good. All right, group number 2.
Okay, so with Tina, you kind of hit a lot of what we we discussed, and you're right, it was kind of all over the place, but I'll try and keep it efficient here. So again, we touched on the mental health issue as well with regards to, you know, homelessness being an issue. I think one thing that was noted is it's one thing to have, you know, homeless people outside of businesses and so on and so forth. But I think another thing that's been increased, and that's kind of a weary situation, is more aggressive individuals that are out there and making people feel uncomfortable being downtown or in any area for that matter. And so obviously that leads into the issue of needing more re-engagement from people to come back to downtown. Being downtown, obviously, we're all used to having a lot of the public sector workers and, you know, state workers and occupying those businesses and having lunch and so on and so forth. So that's really kind of been hurting the business community. So the need for re-engagement is high right now. One other thing that was mentioned was, to Tina's point, the boarded up businesses, you know, the issues of cleanliness around the business, everything's perception, right? And so that's a thing of how do we get people to really, you know, not perceive those areas as scary or uncomfortable. How do we, you know, create that welcoming vibe out there? Another thing that was mentioned is the zero bail deal. So that being where people from all over, not just Sacramento, you know, all over different cities are getting out pretty quickly, and then they go on the streets and they're running around. And so that's another issue. Lighting, needing more lighting to make people feel safe. And one other thing that was mentioned as far as a challenge is, you know, businesses have changed their hours of operation to where they don't want to necessarily have them open late because of, they don't want their employees out at night because it doesn't feel safe for them. So that's another thing that we're seeing. And then of course, the biggest issue that we discussed, and Tina, I think you hit it on the head too, with the litter, debris, cleanliness. I mean, that's a huge component of welcoming people back and making them feel comfortable. And I think that's another big issue that we discussed needs to be addressed. So as far as the immediate actions that we see, we know the city probably already has a lot of resources. Obviously, we can talk about more, but those that are accessible for business owners, maybe with regards to cleanliness, need to be more, we need to get the word out on what those are for these business owners to know, and to know that they have access to those resources. One great suggestion here, and Bay from our team mentioned this, but establishment of a hospitality zone. And what that would be is identifying a zone to be more of a welcoming, safe place for the community to go, and making sure that resources are given to this zone so that it feels clean and it's safe for those, and really encourage engagement in that particular area. So that might be a good program to be supportive in there. To the point of encouraging the public sector to come back, and having the city maybe be that role model for that model, you know, getting people back, whether it's within their own departments, and really encouraging people to come and be engaged and to feel comfortable. One other thing that was mentioned is, as we know, there's a lot of services that are supported in Midtown, downtown, whether it's cleanup, public safety, whatever, but someone noted that those also should be offered to the surrounding corridors and surrounding areas. You know, they're being impacted just the same, if not more, because they have those lack of resources. So increasing those resources to those areas in need. And when it comes to those resources, increasing that service level, it's needed more than ever. So, you know, making it more prominent, getting more people out there to clean, getting more people out there to deal with the safety issues, that needs to happen. One other thing that was noted is about, you know, increasing engagement and what that looks like. And that could be through events, right? As I think Visit Sacramento had talked about some events coming up on other things, but maybe increased funding for some of the creative industry partnerships for engaging to create engaged events, so we can get more people downtown, more people in different areas, midtown, wherever that is, and increase partnerships with groups in areas to increase that social engagement. Right now, everybody's still kind of weary of going to things, so we want to increase that comfortability, increase that social engagement there. And then two other things to mention are, one suggestion was toolkits from the city on how to host those events, maybe a streamlined process of what's necessary to do that. And lastly, to push the city and county to work together on the social services side. I think I got it. Sorry if that was too quick. I wanted to make sure I give everyone time here. If anybody from my group wants to add anything that I may have missed, feel free to do so.
I have one thing that I missed. We have a shitty little problem, and that is people pooping wherever. So more open restrooms, quicker cleanup, and helping the businesses to clean up around their businesses. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Tina. Let's go to group 3.
That's us, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Couldn't remember. Okay, so our group had a very good, very in-depth discussion as well. And we touched on a lot of the factors that everyone else has touched on. So there seems to be some common themes amongst all of the groups. But one thing we did discuss was the perception versus reality of safety, which someone already, had kind of talked about. And so we talked about how, what are, considering some of the things that other neighboring cities are doing, because some of the other cities nearby, they may have the same problems, but they're not as prominent as some of the things that we see in the city of Sacramento regarding homelessness and different things like that. And so we talked about maybe reinterpreting or coming together to discuss Boise a little bit more and see how the city of Sacramento's interpretation of Boise is a little bit different from others. And maybe there could be a reinterpretation or something of that nature. So we do understand that some of these things are short term. We talked about the lighting in certain areas where it's very dark. To me, that seems like a quicker, easier fix, but I'm not sure how complicated it is to go down all the pipelines to get it done. But that is something that is very simple. It's a more simplified approach to at least step one and taking that step and getting something done. We did talk about the wraparound services, because a lot of times, like somebody already said, like someone may have, a certain mental issue that going into a shelter for 5 days is not going to resolve. And so what does that look like? So partnering with different agencies or working with even some of the local colleges that have psych programs where their interns need to get hours for their programming. It's required by certain programs. So maybe partnering with them where it's a lower cost on that end, but you're still getting a greater level of service because you're allowing more people to be able to provide a service. We did talk about working with the advocate community when it comes to the social services, taking a closer relationship, a closer approach with that. Also a closer approach with working with the County of Sacramento as well. And then also we talked about safe parking, maybe looking at some opportunities for safe parking. We talked about how a lot of the streets are being flooded with people who are actually living in their vehicles, and safety is a major concern because now more than ever, you have people trying to protect themselves from what they perceive as unsafe environments, or, what potential dangers could be even for a homeless person who is living on the streets. We talked about how there's people that are homeless, but they're working 2 full-time jobs or a full-time and a part-time job in just circumstances, and so how are they going to feel safe not being in the 4 walls of the home? And so now more than ever, we've seen, where homeless people or other people just out on the streets are carrying guns or weapons to protect themselves or what they perceive as a dangerous environment, and then maybe lashing out or having increased stress and anxiety and what that does. We even have business owners who are out on the streets as well and trying to run their businesses while living out on the streets and trying to dig themselves out of whatever situations they've fallen upon. So we talked about, you know, just some immediate things like safe parking zones or something like that. Revisiting Boise may be able to allow the city to create some boundaries where other cities may have some boundaries in place, and just taking a look at it to see what can be done. And then we talked about incentives for clean and sober living. So some of the programs, one which was brought up was, what, oh my gosh, what was it, Dawn? I'm drawing a blank on the name.
St. John's program.
Yes, St. John's. Dawn had brought that up about St. John's and how they have incentives for clean and sober living. Now, we know that's not the end all be all for everybody, but if we could come up with some ideas that could incentivize folks to live clean, live sober, help us out with safe environments. I know a couple of weeks back on the news or something, they had the city of Elk Grove was giving out money to the homeless population to keep the area clean. And they saw that it was kind of working. So maybe taking in something like that, or a similar approach where there's incentives that are offered. Also, what will really help is to know what projects are planned in what areas, and then discussing the future impacts of those projects. So if it's going to be heavy construction coming, you know, how is this going to impact the neighboring businesses? How is it going to impact parking? How is it going to impact accessibility to the area? Is it going to turn people away because people feel like, you know, I'm not going to stress about trying to get access when I can just go to a different area? We don't want to do that. So we want to create an environment that is open, that's inviting, and most of all, we want to keep that line of communication going. That's pretty much the gist of what we discussed, outside of what everyone else, like I said, all of our conversations seem to be around the same themes, and a lot of us discuss the same exact things that every other group discussed. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Jay, or if anyone from our team 3 has anything else that was maybe missed or wasn't brought up.
Anyone want to add anything? So I think we're good then. Again, I really want to thank the facilitators. I'm hoping that you all will join us on June 3rd as we really try to set the priorities that will then go to the council. And we will also let you know when this is going to council, because if people are able to call in or maybe showing up by that point, we'll see what happens. I think that would be really helpful. I want the business community to have a strong voice in the future of our city on an ongoing basis, not just when there's an issue. I think it's really important. That was one of the goals that we had. We'll also be sending you some information. We're going to ask you to kind of rate the usefulness of these 6 hours or 4 hours or 2 hours, however many of the sessions you attended, to see if this is a good process for you and if it's been a worthwhile use of your time. That's really important to us as we go forward. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Scott will be back June 3rd to help us through our final session. And if I could ask our city staff and my staff to stay on the line, we'll do a quick debrief. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and let's make this happen in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.